space is one of the most facilitating fields of science. It's very fascinating, it's interesting. And I think one of the reasons why most of us are drawn to space is because of astronomy. It's the foundation of everything. Before we talk about space science and technology itself, we also have to talk about astronomy and astronomy education. So I'll be inviting Mr. Samuel, if he doesn't mind, to come and give us his insights on the crucial role that education has to play in advancing the African space program. Thank you so much. Mr. Samuel, please. You have the floor. Okay. I hope you can share your screen. Yeah, I think you can share your screen.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much, Nelly, for the kind introduction.
You're
Good
welcome.
to see every one of you here. So I'll just allow me to share my screen just to say hello. Yes, so just a moment, I share my screen.
You can also share your video if you don't mind.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, please. Yes, it
No
will be good
problem.
to see you speak. Yeah.
Yes. So yes, let me just, okay, good. So thank you, Nelly, for the introduction, and I'm so glad to be talking today about the crucial role that education plays in advancing the Africa Space Program. As I've been introduced, my name is Samuel Nyangi from Leo Sky Africa. So yes, so we can just begin. So this will be the outline of my small talk today. We'll have a few facts to introduce the African Space Program, highlight a few pillars to the African Space Program, and see, so where does education lie in terms of promoting these pillars and the African Space Program at large. And then, of course, the focus of our topic today, highlighting a few importances and the role that education will play in advancing the Africa Space Program, and therefore summarize after that. So the African Space Program, as defined by the African Space Strategy, which is a document, done by the African Union Commission, is an African-led, meaning, the initiative comes from the member states. So the initiative should be well coordinated and having an integrated space program, meaning there has to be a lot of collaboration and networking between the fellow African member states that is responsive to the social, economic, political, and environmental needs of the continent, meaning if you're doing any African space program, it needs to be people-centered. So, and of course, preparing Africa to be a global player in the space industry. So that, in a nutshell, is what the African Space Program is all about. Now, this was actually to be a question to the audience, but so far we have 21 African countries that have active space programs that range from having either active space agencies backed up by national laws, or having institutions of research that coordinate any space related activities in the country. So the number is 21, and bearing this in mind is about half of the African countries. So we are at a good place if we are to advance the space program. And this is probably the most important building in Africa if you're talking about advancing the Africa Space Program, which is the African Space Agency. And I'll throw this question to the audience, just to gauge how much you know African space industry. So what country hosts the African Space Agency? Nelly, maybe you can help me in the chat. So you can just type in your answer, what country hosts the African Space Agency. Nelly, maybe you can read them out to me so that, because I don't have access to them. So you can just type in the chat box.
Okay.
The audience.
Carol has already said Egypt. So, okay.
Egypt.
And Olivia said Ethiopia. Okay.
Ethiopia.
Any other,
yeah, let's
any
keep the
other
answers
ideas? Daniel said Egypt also.
Egypt.
Christine said Madagascar. Okay.
Madagascar.
And
Okay.
Sumo said Egypt. Do you need more opinions?
That's okay. That's
Harry
okay.
said Egypt also. Okay.
Yeah. So the African Space Agency is hosted in Egypt, in the Cairo city, alongside the Egyptian Space Agency, and it will be the body mandated to coordinate the African Space Program. And lastly, since we're talking about education, it's prudent for us to have a picture So how many institutions of higher learning in Africa offer space-related courses? Maybe I can also have the answers in the chat box. So this ranges from astrophysics, satellite communications, aerospace engineering. So how many of those institutions of higher learning, universities, offer such related space courses? You can give a rough number between, what you feel is the rough estimate. How many institutions of higher learning in Africa offer space-related courses? Do we have any answers in the chat so far? Nelly, do you have any answers in the chat so far of how many institutions of higher learning in Africa offer space-related courses? Just give your rough estimates. Nelly, are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. We have 15 from Olivia, 50 from Christy, and 25 from Kimani.
Okay. So those are good numbers. We have about 30. And this is a rough estimate, a rough minimum estimate, because there are some that are still establishing these space-related courses. So with that, we move on to the pillars of the African Space Program. And I highlighted just a few just for this specific webinar. We have infrastructure that ranges from manufacturing industry, manufacturing of satellite components, ranging from space services and space data. How do we use satellite imagery for disaster management? So all that lies under infrastructure. And then we have governance, which will probably be the most important role that the African Space Agency will be required to play in advancing this African Space Program, be it space policy, funding, and creating a framework in which, as the African countries, we can work on. Next is a very key role, partnerships. Partnerships, be it international collaborations, intra-Africa, meaning how do we as African nations collaborate together in order to achieve the African Space Program. And lastly, of course, the public-private partnerships where space entrepreneurship, the private sector fall under. And lastly, which will be the main focus of our webinar today, is capacity building. For us to be able to realize the African Space Program, then we need to educate people, we need to train them. And so in that regard, we ask the question, what value does education bring to the African Space Program? And I highlighted just a few because education really offers us a lot. So the things are capacity building, collaboration and knowledge sharing, driving innovation and infrastructure, and also inspiring the next generation. So one, a very key statement found in the African Space Strategy is that human capacity development is the bedrock of a viable and sustainable African program. So in this in mind, we must ask ourselves, so how do we build this human capacity? And the primary way through which capacity is built is through education. And I'll give an example. If you take a course, for example, in space law and space policy, you are being educated and in turn building capacity to prepare yourself for the industry of space policy. So if we have to realize a successful African Space Program, then we need to incorporate education in order to build capacity for the people that will be required to manage the African Space Program. And a good example of initiatives, that bring together, that necessitate institutions of higher learning to be able to curate, specific people or the next generation of engineers and scientists is the Pan-African University of Space Science Institute, which will be hosted in South Africa. It's not yet operational, but the idea behind it is how do we build this capacity, for the upcoming African Space Program. So this is one of the key roles that education will play, is capacity building. Next, we go to collaboration and knowledge sharing. And really when education, if I may say so, brings people together. So in that bringing of people together, we share knowledge, we share expertise, we share ideas and resources at large. So this creates a framework where if we want an expert in, for example, satellite communications, we know who to go to. If we want an expert in radio astronomy, we know who to go to. So that is curated by education. And a very good example is the DARA program, which is the Development in Africa with Radio Astronomy, a fantastic program facilitated by the University of Leeds in the UK, together with the University of Edinburgh. So you can see they did not keep that knowledge to themselves. So they shared this knowledge with the African continent and giving other partner, which has 8 partner countries, but giving an example of Kenya, the Technical University of Kenya is involved. If you're talking about South Africa, where most of the training happens, we have, SANZA, which is the South African Space Agency. We have the Center for High Performance Computing. So you can see education is bringing all these stakeholders together to be able to share knowledge for the betterment of the African space program, and really just bringing that collaborative effort. And others include in the NASP, which is a program in South Africa that trains astronomers and astrophysicists, which is a combination of 3 universities, UCT, University of Cape Town, Northwest University, and also University of KwaZulu-Natal. So you can see institutions are not keeping the knowledge to themselves. They are trying to come together to be able to achieve a viable space program. So, and this is because we want to leverage the different strengths of different players to be able to realize successful collaboration and knowledge sharing. We go to our third point, which is driving innovation and infrastructure. So I would say that research is actually birthed from education. And when these research initiatives are birthed, then we also need housing, if I may say so, housing of these research facilities. So that is the catalytic effect of now education on how it promotes research and how it promotes infrastructure. And apart from that, education also provides the necessary workforce. It builds capacity for these people who are going to drive research and innovation to be able, because for example, if we are to provide a solution for water management in Africa, for example, we need people who have been educated enough to be able to research on the 1, 2, 3 ways in which we can curate specific needs tailored to our continent as Africa. And that, is backed through education and research. So, and one very good example is Machakos University here in Kenya, who developed a cooling system for the Guangzhou space station, which is currently in orbit. It's the Chinese space station. So as you can see, this groundbreaking research was birthed by the educational initiatives in Machakos University that sat down and said, hey, so how can we collaborate to be able to offer solutions? So, and then of course, others are Center for Basic Space Research at the University of Nigeria, who focus on atmospheric science and tailoring solar solutions, for the community. And lastly, of course, Center for Space Research located in South Africa, who as well do research in their own areas of heliophysics and the sun and all that. So really it drives, we wouldn't have such centers if education did not exist. So I'll go last to my last point, which is probably my most favorite, is that education is the key to driving or inspiring the next generation of scientists, of engineers who will be now advancing the space program, because the space program is a long-term thing. So we need to have continuity. And the only way we can pull those people together is if we start inspiring the next generation of these people. And quite an interesting fact that I saw on a paper was that research shows that the more STEM graduates in a country, the larger its GDP growth. And we can link this to actually the African Space Program and say, the more STEM graduates in a country, then the more advanced, the space program will be, because the space program is entirely based on the STEM field. So this also encourages us, even as we invest in education, because as we invest, we are building problem solvers. I mean, like I said in the previous slide, that if we have to tailor solutions for the African continent to be able to solve our needs, then we need people well educated enough to understand where we come from and understand the solutions that will be crucial, in advancing the African space program. And one initiative, one thing that I would say, STEM goes hand in hand with outreach, because they co-link or co-intermarry, and I'll show that in a slide. So what are we doing as Leo Sky Africa? We do planetarium shows, and this is primarily targeted at the primary school level. And as I said, one of the 4 roles that this kind of education plays, it inspires the next generation. And it's always glad to hear, after certain planetarium show, Mr. Samuel, I want to be an astronomer. I want to join the engineering, aerospace engineering field. So that is where we start. That is where we kickstart, a successful African space program, because we'll be having continuity, people joining in the conversation of space. And secondly, we also do university programs that now target the more advanced level. And in this time, we are building capacity. I remember I mentioned education as a first point builds capacity. So we are building capacity for these specific university students to be able to tackle the industry, or them to be able to be fitted well in the industry. And we've done this with topics such as astrophysics, partnering with the University of Nairobi. We've done this with aerospace engineering, partnering with Kenyatta University, and we are soon coming up with a space policy sort of program to be able to tailor, people who will be the space lawyers and space government experts. And of course, lastly, a space academy, which will be targeting the secondary school students. So as you can see, we are covering the whole spectrum. We're not leaving anyone behind. So we go to primary, secondary, and university and tertiary level. And this space academy, for example, will be promoting collaboration and knowledge sharing, because we are not doing it alone. We will bring players skilled in engineering, players gifted in astronomy for mental health, for example, players gifted in research. So education is how we can bring all these people together to be able to raise a generation of people qualified enough to advance the African space program. And as I almost conclude, there is a very interesting quote that Nelson Mandela gave, was that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And I decided to use this quote and actually make my own and say that STEM education, or in this case, space education, is the most powerful weapon which you can use to advance the African space program. Education is the bedrock of a successful and African space program. So in summary, this is what education does to the African space program. It builds capacity, which is the key role. It fosters collaboration between government, industry, private players. It fosters innovation, creativity, research, and development of infrastructure. Education inspires the next generation of people who are going to take the African space program to the next level. And lastly, education also plays a very key role in establishment of the other pillars that I talked about at the beginning of the webinar, be that space policy, be it governance, be it infrastructure, because the only way these people can help advance the African space program is if we educate them. So I will end there. Thank you so much, Nelly, for this opportunity. If anyone wants to reach me by email, that's my email. And thank you to Leo Sky Africa and Space Hub Africa for making this possible. And as we say at Leo Sky Africa, Africans in space for Africans and by Africans. Thank you. Nelly, back to you. Nelly, are you able to get me? Nelly, if you're talking, I can't hear you.
Hi, so that was a lovely presentation. Sorry for the delay from my end. I could hear you. I just couldn't put myself in out of that. That was a very, very lovely presentation. I have learned a lot, and I'm sure every other person here has also. Okay, there are also very lovely feedbacks from the chat. Thank you so much for the presentation, for your presentation. So I'm going to ask a few questions, and would also love to encourage everybody. If you have any question for Samuel with regards to the presentation that he just made or his work in Blue Sky Africa, you could drop your questions on the chat, and I'm sure he has shared his contact, so you could actually reach out to him personally to ask him if you have any questions. So from my end, I have a few questions on account of time. I'll keep them very short. Okay, so I would like you to tell us, just let us know about your initial interest in astronomy and space technologies. What exactly led to your current involvement in the space sector? Just let us know that quickly.
Okay, so for me, I was inspired to join this field.
You're muted somewhere.
Oh, sorry,
Okay,
sorry. No, I think I've unmuted. Are you able
okay.
to?
Oh, I can hear you. Sorry, I can hear you from my end.
Okay. So personally for me, I was inspired to join the space industry through a space documentary I watched by a famous astronomer from the US. So when I was actually thinking about it, I was like, you know, if that inspiration came from the African continent, then that would be really amazing. So I guess that's why we are having these conversations with you, Nelly, to determine how we as Africans can inspire our own. But that's how I got into. So I was inspired all the way back in primary, and that led me now to pursue STEM subjects in secondary, and thereafter pursue a STEM career or astrophysics at the university level, and now currently working in the sector. So it dated all the way back from primary school.
Okay, thank you so much, Samuel. So this has been a very long journey for you, like
It has,
literally all your life.
yeah.
Wow. Okay, thank you. So how about your experience at Low Sky Africa? From a presentation, I couldn't really get what exactly you do at the company. Like, what exactly do you do at the company? Do you help out with the tech part of it or administration? What part of your job do you enjoy the most?
So for us as New Sky Africa, what I enjoy the most is the point number 4 that I talked about, you know, inspiring the next generation. For us, we do a lot of astronomy education and outreach, and this is what enables us to get hold of the minds, the brightest minds, you know, on this African continent, to be able to come into the space arena and drive the African space program forward. So that is one of the key roles that I really enjoy. And of course, another is being, you know, giving the students or the young minds, you know, an African perspective of space, and telling them that you know, you can be the next astronomers, the next researchers, you know, not just telling them, you know, this is not for you. But for us at Blue Sky Africa, is our goal is to Africanize space, you know, to make the students realize that, yeah, space is for them. Yeah.
Bring it down home. Bring it down home.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
And someone that's really passionate about space education, I'm sure challenges. We have a lot of challenges in the industry. What do you think are the pressing challenges that we have in the continent? Address these challenges.
Okay. So I think one of the challenge that is really facing the African space industry is lack of awareness of the benefit that space can give to them, because I'm sure, for some of us who are in the industry always get this question, why are we investing in space when we have poverty and hunger? But one thing we can do as the players in the space industry is to be able to make the public realize the importance of space and the use of space technologies to better their lives. And I think that's the critical phase, do a lot of public awareness of the importance of space, that space can benefit and can really just improve your standards of living as well.
Yeah, okay, make the public awareness on the importance of space.
Yes.
Amazing,
yes.
Thank you so much. We have a question from the group, so let's just take that. It's from Henry. So he mentioned that you talked about how education is important for capacity building, and looking at the current number of countries in Africa that are involved in the space sector. His question is, what advice do you have for individuals trying to push the space agenda in their respective countries? So I would want to assume that these are maybe for countries that are not spacefaring, or countries that are not yet very active, individuals trying to push space agendas in those countries. That question is from Henry.
Okay, thank you, Henry. It's a good friend of mine from Zambia. So what we can do is a collaborative effort. And I shared this in my slides, is that for us as the African space industry players, we must think of this field as a collaborative field. We must focus on the African continent as our playground, because there's a lot of collaborative gaps that can be filled through space and all the things that space offers. And one of them, I'll give an example, is the Square Kilometer Array. When we are deciding to build a telescope that spans the whole of Africa, we are not just tied to our own country, but extending this invitation to other countries. And answering your question, Nelly, of course, is for us who are already established in the space industry, then we should lend out that hand of invitation to other players that still coming up in the space industries, to be able to realize a global, because space is for everyone. So there's no reason we should leave anyone out of the equation. So a lot of collaboration for the entire industry.
Okay, collaboration, partnership is very, very important. Just as a spin-off to Henry's question, especially when you talk about collaboration, one of the foremost partnership institution that we are rallying around when it comes to space as a continent is the African Space Agency, which we abbreviate as AFSA. So in your opinion, how do you think AFSA will contribute to advancing space education?
I think one of the most critical roles that the African Space Agency will have is, bringing all of us together and creating policies, because now that the AFSA is under the African Union, who are in charge of policy making and all that. So if we can have policies that favor space education, the African Space Agency can come together with the African head of state and say, hey, can you create a framework or a policy that allows for space curriculum development in schools, for example. And with that, since the information is coming from the high level to the low level, I think it becomes easier. So in terms of getting policies that are aligned with promoting space education would be really nice. And of course, now that it's the body mandated to coordinate space activities, they can also initiate space education outreach and provide funding for the same, because now they're in a position to do so.
Yeah, Great, great. I do completely agree. That's a beautiful response. We need policy, but I think more than policy, um, how do we encourage more private sector engagement for space education? Because I think we mentioned the heads of states. Sometimes government, there's so much bureaucracy, and there's so much complacency sometimes from state governments. How do we get more private? This is just a spin of more private involvement for space education.
Okay. I'm not quite sure we can run away from policy, but what we can do as the people already involved, create that platform really. And I think the best way to create that platform is through policy. But aside from that, we can kickstart this thing, because I think one thing that government follows after is the benefit. So if they are seeing the private sector, academia collaborating and having these benefits of space technologies, then they'll come in because they are seeing the benefit of what we are doing. So yeah, we can motivate ourselves really. Yeah.
Great. We have a few more minutes to go, but we have some questions from the group. So Christine wants to know, how can we encourage the government to prioritize space education and space programs for African countries? That's from Christine.
Okay. I think one of the ways that we can make government see the importance is if we show them what they will lose if they don't invest in space education. So we can give them, statistics and analysis of countries that have invested in space education and have had fruitful benefits. For example, more access to satellite data, or more research and innovation that tailors solutions to their countries. So if we give them a rough estimate, for example, of rough estimate, you will lose $10 million in the next 5 years because you've not invested in space technology. Then I think once they see the numbers, they'll be like, hey, this is somewhere we can invest our money in. So, showing them what they will lose if they don't invest, and motivate them to.
Great. Wow, thank you, Samuel. Okay, there's so much a referral back to government participation. I really wish we had a state or congressman in this conversation right now. Okay, so let's take a question from Billy, and then I think Tumo has a question too. So Billy is asking to know, how do you see the future of the space startup economy in Africa? So is it possible to have a favorable environment for African space startups in the near future? So this is not directly connected to SpaceZ, but I'm sure you should be able to address the question. Oh, the same.
Sorry about that, Nelly. Maybe you can come again. I didn't get the question quite correctly. The role of, where does the space startup ecosystem lie? Was that the question? Nelly is muted. And Nelly, maybe you can just clarify, but let me just also.
Okay. All right. Yes. Sorry about that, everybody. Okay, so the question was, how do you see the future of the space startup economy in Africa? Is it possible to have a favorable environment for African space startups in the near future? A favorable environment for African space startups?
Yeah, I think the future is actually very bright, and I'll give an example of a project as Leo Sky Africa we were involved in last year. Was the Africa Earth Observation Challenge, which brought together space startups that use satellite technology for socioeconomic benefit. So in this regard, there's a lot of investment that is being made in the space industry that allows for space startups, that do education, do outreach, do research, use satellite technology to be able to advance the African space program. So there's a lot of I think the field has been laid such that it's no longer a government thing. Even the space startups that are leveraging space technologies and also just inspiring the next generation through astronomy education and outreach, they too have a place in the African space industry, and I think it's been very well laid by the players we've been having so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Samuel. So, your future is bright.
The future is bright.
Tumo has a very, very long question here. So I'm going to send the text to you, the entire text. Yes, it's a copy.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just go straight to the question. So her question is, okay, as a background, she said she has come across a paper that shows that women pursuing STEM and space career decrease as they go into higher education and professional careers. So you have mentioned that in Leo Sky, you advance space and STEM education from basic to tertiary level. So how are girls and women participations statistics in your work? Yeah, so in your work, how are the participation of girls and women, like in the schools you visit, how is it looking like? And then how best do you think we can improve them for more girls and women to continue with space and STEM careers? We cannot escape gender diversity. It just has to show up.
Yeah. Yeah, that is actually very true. And I think one interesting thing that I think it takes a pioneer to change an industry, because as Tuma said, who is also my very good friend, that if you look at the space industry, the representation, women are still underrepresented. So it takes trailblazers. And I give an example. We have an OED funded project here in Kenya that talked about educating the girl child. You educate the entire community with astronomy. So their main focus was how do we tap into the girl child that is at primary school, that is at secondary school, and show them the way that, you know, physics is not a hard subject as it is quoted in some countries. That physics, that you are very capable of actually being a physicist. You are very, very capable as a woman to advance the African space program. So for me, I think what we can do for the people who have that burden, you know, that we need more representation in the African space industry by women, we should be the ones making the initiative. And I know Atumo, I think, led an initiative, Women in Space in Botswana or something. But yeah, that's what we can do. It must come from us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. This has been really engaging. Just maybe one or two more questions before we call it an evening. So yes, and this is very particular for me because I really love space ed at the primary levels. I'm able to speak to hundreds of children in Nigeria with regards to space. So, but taking into consideration our current status, regards to how the space industry is still growing in the continent, which would you suggest we should focus on more in terms of space education? So should we focus more on primary level or the secondary or the tertiary levels? I know that they are all important, but if we're going to place priority, which would you think we should focus more?
I think that's a very good question. For me, what I think is the best place is to strike the iron while it's still hot. And that means, you know, tapping into the early group as early as possible to be able to drive them, you know, to the next level in terms of space education. But for what we are currently seeing, we are seeing a lot of burst, you know, in the bubble of the space industry. So I think the best thing is to focus on the people who are already there, that means the tertiary institutions or the universities, because these are people who are ready for the job market. So I think if you are placing priority, we should maybe go towards that side, but of course over time, build up on primary, build up on the secondary level as well.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. I really want to be a bit biased for little children too.
Yeah.
But that's a great response. Thank you so much, Samuel.
You're welcome.
So regards to space education, do you have any role models in the African space industry? Is there any particular expert that is really promoting space education that you'd like to give a shout out to? What have you learned from this person?
Uh, yeah, definitely. I think one of the people who inspire me the most is Professor James Chibweze from South Africa, who I
Okay.
had the privilege of being tutored by. And we also have Dr. Val of the African Space Leadership Institute, and of course here in Kenya, Professor Baki. And one thing I've noticed with all of them is their initiatives for advancing the African space program are people-centered. So their main focus is how do we build the people, how do we build the human capacity to be able to advance the space program? Because if you focus on the people, then the people can do the rest. So I think that's one thing I've learned from them, and also take it to the audience that the initiatives we start should be prioritized to better the lives of our fellow Africans.
Great. Absolutely, Samuel. I agree. Wow, thank you so much for sharing that personal insight. And I really want to appreciate our audience. I don't know, does anybody have any question at all? Um, if there are no questions, I don't know, Samuel, do you have any parting words first? Any last words?
I think for me, what I can say is the African space industry is experiencing, a rapid development. So if you want to be where the people are, if you want to be where the money is, if you want to be where
Yes,
the
yes.
conversations, are being held, then the African space industry is being really, now it's in infant stage. So we can all come together and collaborate for the future of Africa.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Samuel. It has been an amazing time. I've personally learned a lot, and I'm sure that everybody on the call also think we have a message here. Okay, last minute question. Sorry, before you go. From Daniel. I hope my voice is not echoing. Am I echoing?
No, it's okay.
Great. Are there organizations that are committed to partnering or are ready to donate equipment and resources to enhance space education in Africa? Yeah.
From what I know, the Office of Astronomy for Development usually has yearly grants that are geared towards initiatives such as this. You put forward your proposal, and if your proposal is people-centered and also looking to advance space education in your specific country, be it building capacity, buying telescopes, then I think they do that. And I'm sure there are other, initiatives by, specific governments or industry players that are geared toward this. The good thing is that they are there, so we just need to find them where they are.
All right, thank you so much, Samuel. Okay, I don't think we have any other message. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been a wonderful conversation. It's not 8:30 p.m. yet. Thank you Samuel. Thank you, everybody. We've really had a great time. Please, if you have further questions, Samuel, please, have you shared your
Let me
profile?
just type my email.
Yeah, please. Yeah,
okay.
Please do so. You can always reach out to Samuel personally if you have any questions, you want to collaborate with Leo Sky Africa. Please feel very free to do so. Let me see. Maybe your email. Great.
Yeah.
And I think you can also get him on LinkedIn with his name. You can just get him on LinkedIn with his name. All right, so we have a recording of the video, and we'll try to post it on our YouTube page and our social media handles for those of you that may want to rewatch to get some of the points. If you want to get the slides, I think you should reach out to Samuel for the slides. Yes, thank you so much for your kind words. I wish everybody a very lovely week ahead. Just a little shout out. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you so much, Mr. Abraham. Thank you, Keketso. Thank you, Jake. I see a lot of my SJC people. SJC is just amazing. Thank you all for joining, guys. Thank you, David. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Carol. Please, we'd love you to join our next conversation series. If you're an expert and you want to have a conversation with us or a discussion, you can reach out to me on WhatsApp. I think most of you have my number already. So I wish everybody a wonderful evening and have a great time.
Thank you. Thank you, Nelly.